in what's misery, but it looks normal. So you don't know to call it misery because it's normal behavior. And I was raised in a tension-filled home. And I was raised around women that were mentally ill too. And when I say mentally ill, it's just a lot of things we were raised to believe and conditioned, and the traditions that's cemented in us. And I wasn't willing to let it go. I was strong in being mentally ill until my friend said, let's have some conversations. And it was those conversations that were taking me to my knees, because no one had ever said it and put it like that before. And I said to him, I said, Daddy, I know I'm not unique. And I know there's a lot of people out there that's mentally ill just like me. And could you please do this show so we can have these conversations, because I believe it will save people's lives.
You think at least what you were dealing with is kind of connected to this big conversation now with African Americans and dealing with that? Is that kind of falling into that, what you had personally going on?
When you say connected?
Like, there's a big conversation now about mental illness in our community, and Charlamagne the God, he's one of the people that try to advocate it constantly.
I won't even accept that he is advocating for mental illness. Stop it, Leonard. Whichever camera is mine, Leonard, you're advocating for mental illness.
He's big on that. That's his thing. Why that response to him on that?
That response to him on that is because I've seen and heard the destruction that brother has done in our community. I've heard the poison that he's poured out over that air in our community. Now, everyone's allowed to change. Let me say that. Everyone can wake up and say, you know what, I now see it differently. But I think that the only way we make change in our community is at first acknowledge we were part of the damage. So I say Leonard and we laugh, but in all seriousness, I think that brother played a big part in the destruction of our community. Now,
but not a big part, because his span of time doing what he's doing or has been doing, I can't give him that type of negative credit, but it's the equivalent of saying there's a level of perpetuation of fame and a lack of empathy that I've seen him indulge in. When I watched, obviously Monique's interview with him, now he's speaking in reference to women's rights and things of that nature, where no one would question any of the kings of comedy. If you look at their career from DL to Steve to Bernie to Cedric, working consistently, flowing, no question. You look at the queens, what's the difference? And other than they're women. And there's a level of acknowledgement that wasn't given. When you see him having the interview with Kanye, and that man invites him out to his home, and then after interviewing with him, he's donkey of the day. There's a lack of empathy that this man gives to the community. So if you're an advocate for it, then that means you remove donkey of the day and you understand that people make mistakes. Or there's a level of consideration for people that I haven't seen him give, because it's more about ratings, it would appear. Somebody may have spoken to him and maybe he's opened his mind, his heart, and things of that nature. But there's a coarseness to his energy. There's a lack of connect to his people.
Y'all, this one right here is pure luxury, love, and a
that I've seen. So I don't want to say he's the reason why, but it's just intriguing that you say that this is what he's a part of. And I hope that he's really about it and starts to be a little bit more considerate of others who may have made some mistakes along the way, or what he considers to have made a mistake, in speaking up for black women as she has, as well as black men, which people don't know about, cannot make you donkey of the day.
See why we're together.
There are some conversations that shake the internet and remind everyone why certain voices cannot be ignored. Today's story is one of those moments. This one takes us deep into a raw, emotional, and honest reflection from the legendary Monique, a woman who has never been afraid to speak her truth, even when it meant standing alone. What she said about Charlamagne the God years ago is now coming back into focus after everything we've seen recently with Roland Martin and the ongoing conversations around mental health, respect, and accountability in our community. So sit back, grab your drink, and stay with me till the end, because the truth Monique spoke might just hit harder today than ever before. It all started during one of Monique's deeply emotional interviews where she opened up about her upbringing. She didn't hold back. She talked about what it meant to grow up in an environment full of tension, confusion, and emotional pain, the kind of pain that becomes normal because it's all you know. She said something powerful, that when you grow up in misery, it starts to feel like normal life. You don't even know it's misery because everyone around you is living the same way. That kind of statement already had viewers quiet because so many could relate to that exact kind of upbringing. As she continued, she described being surrounded by women who were also struggling mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. She wasn't judging them, she was identifying with them. She admitted that she too had been mentally unwell for a long time, but didn't even realize it because she thought it was strength. Monique said she was strong in being mentally ill. That hit differently. The honesty in those words showed the deep level of reflection she had reached in her life. It took real conversations, tough ones with people she trusted, for her to finally face what she had buried for years. And that's when she turned to her friend and said something that changed the tone completely. She said, "Daddy, I know I'm not unique. I know there's a lot of people out there that's mentally ill just like me, and could you please do this show?" She wanted those hard, healing conversations to happen publicly because she truly believed they could save people's lives. That's the part where the entire room fell silent. Monique wasn't just talking about herself, she was talking about all of us who carry pain but never name it. Then came the question that would open the door to the moment that fans still talk about to this day. The interviewer asked whether what she went through personally connected to the larger conversation happening around mental illness in the Black community, a conversation that Charlamagne the God had been vocal about in recent years. But before the interviewer could even connect those dots, Monique stopped him cold. The moment was unforgettable. She said she wouldn't even accept the idea that Charlamagne was advocating for mental health. "Stop it, Leonard," she said, using his real name and turning straight to the camera. "You're advocating for mental health?" Then she laughed. But it wasn't a laugh of humor. It was a laugh of disbelief. That moment set social media on fire. People could feel the sting in her words. It wasn't random shade. It was pain, disappointment, and experience speaking. Monique went on to say that she had seen and heard the destruction that Charlamagne had caused in the community. She talked about the poison he poured over the airwaves, how some of the things he said weren't just jokes, they were harmful, and they stayed in people's minds long after the laughter ended. She was careful to say that everyone is capable of change, that anyone can wake up and decide to be different. But she made one thing very clear. You can't truly change until you first acknowledge the damage you caused. When she said that, the internet lit up with old clips and memories of Charlamagne's early days on radio and television. People started remembering the countless controversial Donkey of the Day segments, the celebrity feuds, and the times when real people's pain became punchlines. Monique wasn't just criticizing him for the sake of it. She was calling out a bigger pattern. She was talking about empathy, accountability, and what happens when you have a platform that shapes how people think about each other. She reminded everyone that you can't call yourself an advocate for healing while at the same time tearing people down for laughs or ratings. She pointed to his famous Donkey of the Day segment, saying that if you truly care about mental health and empathy, then you'd understand that people make mistakes. You wouldn't use their lowest moments for entertainment. The audience felt that. Many nodded, others argued, but one thing was certain: Monique had sparked a necessary conversation. As the story spread, more people revisited the famous tension between Monique and Charlamagne that started years earlier, when she appeared on The Breakfast Club. That interview was one of the most talked about moments in Monique's career. Charlamagne had labeled her Donkey of the Day before she even came on the show, after she spoke publicly about her fallout with Netflix, Lee Daniels, Oprah Winfrey, and Tyler Perry. Monique faced that label head-on right there on his own show. She told him directly that what he did was part of the problem, how quickly people in power are willing to shame and silence Black women when they speak up for fairness. Her words that day echoed in this later interview. She made it clear that the lack of empathy wasn't just a one-time thing. It was a repeated pattern she'd seen over and over in how Charlamagne treated certain people, especially Black women. She said that someone who truly advocates for mental health has to move differently. They have to lead with compassion, not with mockery. And she didn't stop there. She went deeper. She said that she found it strange that Charlamagne was often treated as an authority on important social and psychological topics, when in her view, he hadn't shown the empathy or growth necessary to carry that title. She said, "It's odd to me when I hear people and see him on CNN and they talk to him as if he's some authority. He hasn't had the tenure in this life to have the authority." That statement sparked days of discussion online. People debated what it really means to have authority. Is it fame? Is it experience? Or is it how you treat people when the cameras are off? Monique's point was simple but powerful. If you're going to be a voice for the community, your actions have to match your message. You can't talk about healing if you're still feeding into the same cycles that cause the pain. And when she said that, you could hear the emotion in her voice. She wasn't angry, she was disappointed. It came from a place of someone who had lived through public ridicule, misunderstanding, and emotional exhaustion. Then she drew a powerful comparison. She brought up the kings of comedy, D.L. Hughley, Steve Harvey, Cedric the Entertainer, and the late Bernie Mac. She said that all those men had continued to work, to thrive, and to be celebrated. But when you look at the queens of comedy, women like Monique, Adele Givens, Samore, and Laura Hayes, their careers didn't get the same kind of consistent support or visibility. Monique questioned why that was. The only difference, she said, was gender. And that reality hurt because it exposed how the entertainment industry often uplifts men while leaving women behind for speaking too loud or asking for fairness. That part of the conversation shifted everything again. People realized that Monique wasn't just talking about Charlamagne, she was talking about a system, one that rewards silence and punishes truth-telling. She was connecting the dots between her own experiences with people like Steve Harvey, D.L. Hughley, and the larger media structure that Charlamagne represents. She was showing how all of it ties back to empathy, accountability, and respect. And as she spoke, her husband Sidney Hicks, often sitting beside her during interviews, nodded in agreement. He's been her biggest supporter through every public battle. Together, they've always spoken about honesty, love, and self-awareness. In this moment, you could feel that unity. When she said that calling out unfairness should never make someone a donkey of the day, she wasn't just defending herself, she was defending every person who's ever been shamed for speaking their truth. Then the conversation took another emotional turn. Monique reflected on how her early years of fame were filled with moments where she had to be the strong Black woman, holding everything together. But that strength, she admitted, often came from a place of hurt. She said, "I was strong in being mentally ill." That sentence alone became a quote that people shared across social media for days. It reminded people that sometimes what we call strength is actually survival, and survival is exhausting. Throughout this discussion, the interviewer also mentioned Roland Martin, who has recently been having deeper conversations about how the media portrays Black voices and mental health. The timing of Monique's older comments suddenly felt like prophecy. People started saying Monique warned us, because years before these current debates, she had already called out how certain figures, including Charlamagne, were being positioned as spokespersons for a healing movement without first healing themselves. That's the part that makes this story hit even harder today. When you listen closely to Monique's message, it's not about hatred, it's not about revenge, it's about self-awareness. She wants the people who hold the microphone, the power, and the influence to take responsibility for the energy they put into the world. She wants them to understand that words matter, especially when those words are broadcast to millions. And in a time where everyone wants to go viral, her reminder couldn't be more important. Monique was telling us that fame without empathy is empty, that healing can't happen while the same people who caused harm pretend to lead the solution. And that's what makes her comments so timeless. Because every few years we see another example of exactly what she was warning about. Even now, when you scroll through social media, you'll see people revisiting that clip, putting it side by side with newer moments. The way Charlamagne interacts with guests, how he's positioned as a mental health advocate, how he's invited to serious panels and interviews. Some say he's grown, others say he's performing growth for the cameras. But Monique's point wasn't about whether he's capable of change, it was about the sincerity behind it. As she continued, she emphasized that she truly hopes he is changing. She said she hopes he's opened his mind and heart, that he's learning to be more considerate. But she also said that until empathy becomes part of his natural way of being, she can't take his advocacy seriously. That's heavy, because it's not coming from a hater, it's coming from someone who's seen both sides of fame, the applause and the isolation. By the time the interview ended, viewers were emotional. Some were clapping for Monique's honesty. Others were debating her tone.